here we have another instance of doing something while black and getting the police called on you for it. Now, this time, it happened where a couple of black men were in a vintage store called Beatniks, and they decided to ask too many questions. Now, according to Raw Story, the owner of a vintage clothing store had called police on a black customer who asked a question about why he may have been selling racist merchandise. Now, this is Dennis Bird, and he and some friends had stopped by this establishment, which sells costumes, wigs, and various flags. Now, while he was in the store, he spotted a leather vest that had a Confederate flag, battle flag, imprint in it. Now, Dennis and his friend Dan Shade, asked an employee why they were selling the vest along with flags that celebrated LGBT rights. There seemed to be a rather strange combination here, right? Here we got your pride flags over here. Oh, and then by the way, you've got apparently your white pride flags over here in the form of the Confederate flag. Now, the employee had said, yeah, we sell vintage items. I don't tell anybody what to believe. Here, why don't you go talk to the owner? And that's what they did. Now, the owner is a man named Keith Basseri. Now, he said, when pointed out, that the vest was not appropriate to sell on the main floor. And he said, okay, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to toss it behind the counter. Well, now, even after that had happened, the two had a bit of an altercation, a bit of an argument afterwards. Now, before I get into that, I think that if you had kept it to throwing it behind the desk and saying, you're right, this is not appropriate to sell, that's fine. I actually do believe personally that all Confederate flags, all things Confederate, belong in a museum inside of a Racism in America exhibit. That's me. I would throw all those statues and all that stuff in a museum that points out what you should not do. Anyway, now, if they had left it there, fine. But apparently, the owner started talking about other things, apparently bringing up Jussie Smollett. And look, I'll be honest, I was skeptical of the Jussie Smollett story. Nonetheless, Smollett had been cleared of all charges, right? Whether or not you are skeptical of it, right? He has been cleared. Now, apparently Bird had said, hey, you shouldn't be making things up that aren't true, like the Jussie Smollett case. Now, apparently, the owner had believed that he wasn't attacked and had brought that into an argument over a Confederate vest, which is strange to me. It's very strange. And on that vest, of course, Bird said, I told him, why should we be subjected to symbols like this? As a black person, I am offended. I am offended by this. And he has every right to be. But unfortunately, that's when the store owner started to get a little bit angry. Now, the store owner said, quote, he was so combative, saying, get it through your thick effing skull. This is not racist. Well, now, wait a minute here. If it's not appropriate to have been held or to be on the main floor, you got to ask why. Why was it inappropriate? Well, it's because it's racist. You can't go and then argue that it's not racist. That's really strange. The story is very, very strange, right? Now, what happened afterwards, of course, is that, according to Bird, the owner had said that they were trespassing to get the F out, or he would call the police. Well, now that escalated very quickly. Now, if the owner had said, hey, look, we don't endorse this, I've removed it from the floors, or anything else I can do for you, that would have been fine. That would have been a good way to handle it. Instead, we had somebody get upset, according to some of these guests. Now, of course, when an employee picked up the phone, Dennis and his friends decided to leave for fear of ending up in a police altercation. Now, the owner had his own explanation of what happened. He said, we do not sell that type of merchandise normally. It was not a shirt. It was a leather vest. And it wasn't being sold to support any such ideas. It was taken off the floor, and the customer didn't want to stop going on about it. And when he wouldn't stop, was asked to leave. And yes, the police were called. And when they came, they said they could arrest him for criminal trespassing. And I said, that would not be necessary. If you choose not to come to Beatniks, that is your choice. But based on this sloppy person's very poor listening skills, and your insistence on arguing a point unnecessarily since the item in question was taken off the floor, it seems irrational. Okay, well, okay. That post is incredibly salty, right? So now we'll get to another account of what happened, right? Now, Bird said that numerous former employees and customers of Beatniks had reached out to him after this story had gotten out. And they shared similar experiences at the store. So the one experience, it sounds like he got mad and maybe he was annoyed from all the questions and the, hey, I'm offended. And why are you calling me a racist? I'm not a racist. I took this off the floor. But apparently, according to others, this is not the first time something like this has happened. Now, Christian Aguiano, a former employee who worked at Beatniks more than 10 years ago, said that he was not surprised by the incident, and he described a rule that apparently or allegedly was enforced when it came to black people in the store. Quote, the rule from day one is that anytime you see a black person in the store, you're supposed to follow them and continuously offer to help them or suggest items so they get annoyed and leave. We were told to ask any black person for their bag, to hold behind the counter, and if anyone else was nearby, ask for their bag too so the customers won't say anything. Now, Basiri, of course, denied instructing his staff to pay close attention to black customers, saying that he instructs them to keep a watchful eye on old customers, regardless of race, because he has had instances of theft. He said, quote, we lose about $100,000 a year due to theft, and it's almost put me out of business many times. People say that checking bags is racist, but we check everyone's bags because all kinds of people steal. However, according to other people who had worked there, like, for example, Armand Fields. Now, Armand Fields is actually the first black drag queen to win Roscoe's Drag Race. He had also worked at Beatniks a few years ago, but quit because it wasn't worth it. Fields said after quitting, they once were shopping in Beatniks when they witnessed Bakari use the N-word after calling the police on a group of black youth. So this is an interesting story, right? Because there's a lot of different angles here, and there seems to be a pattern, according to people who had either shopped there or worked there, of some racist attitudes. Now, Anguiano also said that he has heard Basiri use the N-word. Now, he says, no, it's not racist in its treatment of customers. We're not racist here. No, we don't do any of that. He said, I've been on Halstead for 30 years, so there have probably been incidents that weren't perfect or things that said that weren't perfect, but that's not the intent. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're saying the N-word, I think the intent is very, very clear. And you also talk about how, you've lost a lot of money due to theft, and so having this official but unofficial policy of checking black people's bags and then saying, oh, no, we're not just checking black people, we're going to check everybody's bags. I don't know. I think you see the intent here. At this point, though, it is kind of their word versus his, but his word, I don't think is holding up too well. And look, calling the cops on people asking questions, ridiculous. Again, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't have the cops called on you for asking a question or being offended by a piece of clothing, especially one where you can understand why offense was taken. The Confederate flag, no doubt, is a racist symbol, right? That's what it is. It stands for a country that based itself in enslaving black people. That was the whole point of the country, to continue doing that. So yes, if black people get offended, you should let them get offended because that is offensive. And not call the cops for asking questions. Just remove the piece of clothing as you originally did. Say, I'm sorry, this is offensive. We will not sell this. We didn't mean to have it there. There was an excuse that one of the stockers said, "Oh, I didn't know the difference between a British flag, the Union Jack, and this flag, the Confederate flag. Oops, my mistake." That's a pretty weak sauce excuse, but and I wouldn't have went with that. No, you just remove you apologize, and you say that's not what we stand for. There was a million ways that he could have handled it, and none of the ones that he did were the right ones. And you have to wonder why. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm gonna have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.